We're both members of Madrigals, which is the a cappella group at the Moorestown High School, and we're also members of the concert choir. And we just both wanted to say a couple words about our amazing teacher, Mrs. Markowski. I met her my freshman year, and she's literally made the biggest impact on my life, not only as a singer and a performer, but just as a person. Words cannot describe what an amazing teacher she is.
I would have to say, like, if anybody could embody Moorestown High School music program, nobody could do it better than Mrs. Markowski. She's the perfect person to teach it. She knows so much about music, and she's taught us so much. She's so dedicated to this job, and she really cares about each and every one of us, which is really special in a teacher.
So we just wanted to ask you to keep that in mind when making your decisions about that, because it's those teachers that are really important.
We understand. Thank you very much. Non-students, if you would give us your name and address. Yes, ma'am? Come to the microphone, please. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were with them, or if you'd like to speak, please come. You came all this way. Yeah.
I take a lot of issue. First of all, my name is Sophia Gamber. I'm a senior at the high school. Hi, everybody. Thank you. That's lovely. I take a lot of issue with what's going into the budget this year. I think most people here, as evidenced by the numbers here, take a lot of issue with what's going into the budget this year. I think it'd be impossible for me to tell you all of the important and amazing programs that have benefited me in so many ways over my 13 years in this district. I have begun here as a 5-year-old, and I left here as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old student, and I feel so confident in the life that I am going to have thanks to this district. But the thing that really bothers me the most about this proposed budget is the proposed pay to participate. Thank you. Yes, horrible. I think of all the options we have, it is in some ways the lesser of two evils, but it is definitely an evil. I think it upholds a long-held standard that education is only for the wealthy. I think it upholds a standard that we cannot hold ourselves to. And I think for me, as someone who has benefited immensely from the extracurricular activities that I have led, that I have been a part of, that I have founded, I know that my life would not be as full without them. I know that my chances at paying for my college education would not be as likely or as easy without the scholarship funds that I've received from my participation within these activities, for the collegiate level leadership conferences that I've been invited to for these extracurricular activities. I know it's proposed that we will be able to help students who can't pay for these programs, but we don't recognize that there is a middle ground. There are people who struggle to pay for their expenses who aren't necessarily, in the reduced lunch program. My family struggles to stay in this district every year. We try because this is the place to get a world-renowned education. This is where we go so that we can have the best life possible. And it wouldn't be possible for me if I had had to pay for my club participation. I wouldn't have been able to afford it, but I wouldn't have qualified for assistance. And that is an issue that I ask the board to consider immensely closely, in addition to all of the other things that must be, of course, immensely closely considered. Thank you.
Thank you. again, let me just mention, you know, one of the things that I had on my list that I still want to talk about is that particular issue. We may come to a conclusion up to at the preliminary budget that's one way. It may change again. It's something we're going to continue to talk about, and we really appreciate your feedback. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from other members of the community about the same issue, whether they were able to afford it or not. It's not something that I think is particularly palatable. And I agree with that extracurricular activities are sometimes the heart of your education. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Amy Delgado, 6 Walnut Court. I have a student in 4th grade currently at the US, so she's in that bubble grade that she's in an inclusion classroom with 26 kids this year. So I just wanted to know if I could get a little clarification as they go. Obviously, they have the biggest class. What do you, because you said maybe 26, 27. She's already at 26. So where would that number be for them?
So, yeah.
We currently have 12 sections in 4th grade, and we will have 12 sections again next year in 5th grade. We don't anticipate that enrollment will change too much. We will have students who move out over the summer. We will have students who move in. We are currently at 303 students in 4th grade. We anticipate that to stay about the same number for 5th grade. So the classes will be at 25, with a couple of those who may move up to 26. And that's where we'll be for 5th grade.
So even with the cut, it will, because we're at 26 now.
Not
so
every class is at
no.
26.
Okay.
3 of the 12 sections currently are at 26.
Okay. So it would be about the same. And I also just want to say, piggybacking on what you said, I agree with you about the pay to play. I know it's a huge revenue booster. It probably makes sense financially, but I do feel like the middle ground of Moorestown does tend to get lost quite often. We have very, very wealthy people, and then there's people that are just regular people. People that don't get raises every year, people that pay more and more and more for everything. And sometimes, I mean, we have a family of 4, so I'm speaking from somebody that will be paying a lot for a lot of years. So.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hello. My name is Laura O'Hare, and I live at 318 West 3rd Street. And I have 3 comments. The first being that, Mr. Mishler, I know that you said you didn't have a choice but to institute the pay per play for the clubs. And I can tell you that you do have a choice because it is technically a rounding number. A rounding error is bigger than the amount that you'll receive from these students that are paying to play. $25 for a fee for clubs and $225 for athletics. It is chump change compared to the cost of operation in the total budget. So I ask you to please, because it's going to touch people personally, and please consider just wiping the whole thing out. I don't know if all of you know, but there have been numerous cases, lawsuits across the country, many sponsored by the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. They say that free in a constitution is free. When you say you have a totally free education, that means you don't have to come out of pocket for any of the things that a school offers a child. And I will tell you that paying for parking and a lot that's already paid for as part of your capital budget is not free. That is a fee. That is a user fee, and that means it's not free education. A lot of those kids that drive to school also drive to jobs afterwards, or they take their younger brothers and sisters to appointments while their parents work. And so I suggest to you guys that that also is something you should reconsider. And thirdly, you talked about getting rid of the home ec or whatever. I can't remember the name of the class, but it's basically the cooking class. And I will tell you that most of us are like, we suffered through cooking in high school. But none of you know, because I don't have clients in Moorestown, but I own a public affairs company. I used to be a lobbyist. Most of my clients are in other states, but I work very closely with food banks in 4 different states and hundreds of charities that I do public affairs for and public relations. And the silent majority of the people that go to those food banks are not on assisted programs. They don't qualify for those free lunches. But they're the ones that are at Moorestown Hardware now being carpenters because they're underemployed and they haven't gotten a job in 2 years and their house is flipped and it's worth less than they paid for it. They are not going to come to you and embarrass their kids and ask for money so their kids can go to these programs. They'll just drop out. And that's what happens nationwide. So I suggest to you, you probably all are employed, and to you, $100, $500, $1,000 is nothing. It's the principle. If kids get free education, they get it whether it's in morning, noon, or night. Whether it's the weekend, it's free. So I suggest to you think twice about that. And then the last thing is about the food. Excuse me. I work very closely with a lot of grocery chains, and there's a thing called food deserts, where kids across the country are not able to get to grocery stores. ShopRite is one of my clients. Kids are not learning how to cook vegetables anymore, and the reality is that kids are undernourished and malnourished. They get plenty of food. They may be overweight and they're malnourished. And there are programs that are going to teach kids how to cook so they know what a squash is and how to cook it. If you get rid of this little program, it may not seem like much to you, but the reality is those kids are learning how to sew and take care of themselves, and budget and cook. And so it is a trend to bring those into the schools, not to take them away. So, thank you.
The gentleman in the hat wanted, I said he could come up next. Yes, sir? Okay, I didn't know that was long.
Hi, I'm Rick Rohrbach, 317 Westover. I have two questions and a comment. The first question has to do with the high school. It sounds like we were going to have 5.5 FTEs cut, and two of those positions are going to be replaced. I guess I'm curious, why don't we just dip more into the bank cap and replace all of them? Because the other positions that were cut had to do with enrollment reductions. So what's the rationale to cut any positions in high school?
The original cuts were proposed in the areas that we talked about earlier. I think we would take the first two priority areas where the class sizes would be the most challenging, and at this point, that's what our proposal is. Your question is use bank cap to cover all of the areas. That's something the board would have to discuss.
K-8, all the reductions related to a reduction in enrollment. In high school, any of the reductions are going to result in an increased class size. And I'm wondering how we came up with 5.5 to begin with, and why we're resolving back to 3, or 3.5.
I wasn't here, but I know that in the past, the elementary schools had some pretty significant cuts in previous years. We are now at class size of 25 in the early grades, and in prioritizing the class sizes at high school going to 27, as opposed to 4th grade going to 27, I think the priority is to keep the elementary school as low as possible.
But that assumes that you have to do one or the other. I guess I'm just saying there's more money in the bank cap. Why not use it so we don't have to deal with that? Because we're talking about revenue generation down the road, and we're talking about looking at other cost reductions. I mean, Mr. Weinstein, you talked about healthcare benefits. So, why don't we do that? I don't understand why we wouldn't dip into it.
I understand your statement. The board will take it under consideration.
So that's the first question. Second question, it was alluded to, but I haven't heard a number. How much money is expected to be raised in the paper plan?
Right now, it's about $200,000 between the pay to play and the parking fee.
In the park.
Couldn't hear the question.
What's that?
Couldn't hear the
I'm
question.
sorry, I asked how much the pay to play was going to raise. The answer was $200,000. And I just want to piggyback. I agree that we should do this for all the reasons that were said. I also want to point out that the clubs and the athletic and the sports teams already defray a significant portion of the cost of those programs through their own fundraising efforts, and because the parents are already writing checks for some of that program. So they are already paying more than their fair share of the cost. So I think to ask for more is unreasonable. Thank you.
Hello. Jim Johnston, 34 Castleton. I've heard a lot of numbers and looked at a lot of numbers over the past few weeks, and I heard a new one tonight. There was a back-of-the-envelope estimate for next year's budget that if we raise taxes the allowable 2%, we will still have a $3 million shortfall. So call it a $2 million shortfall, okay? So on a $60 million budget, we raise taxes another $1.2 million, so call that $1 million. We're still $2 million short. That means expenses are going up $3 million, correct? On a $60 million budget. So that's about 5%, correct? So expenses are going up 5% a year. The governor has said we're only allowed to raise revenue 2% per year. So we're going to get this crowd together every year, right? And look at cutting services 3% a year. Every year, for as long as expenses keep going up 5% a year. My question is, if cost of living is going up about 1.5% a year, why are our expenses going up 3 times that? I don't think there's an answer here tonight, but I think that's really all the parking fees, pay to play, those are pennies compared to what we're talking about. We can't cut services 3% a year every year. These people, a lot of people moved here or stayed here specifically for the schools. That's why a lot of people are here. I think we have to look at how expenses are outpacing cost of living by such a great extent over the next few years. Thank you.
How are you? Can you hear me? Sorry. Mark Sullivan, 100 Erickson Ave. One of the questions I had, I know earlier, I believe it's Ms. Sugars, my vision's not that good, had mentioned that the school district's bringing in roughly $400,000, I believe she said, through busing in special needs people from other townships and stuff like that. First question I had is, how much are we putting out as far as busing kids in who aren't special needs? Just bringing kids back in from other towns who may have lived here for a month, 6 months, 7 months like that, moved out of town, and now we're spending money to bring them back to town and keeping them coming to schools. The reason I'm asking that is because we're talking about passing a hat around basically to the seniors, 200 seniors to collect a couple $1,000s in parking, whereas we're putting $20,000, $30,000 out to bring a kid 10 miles from another town to this school who I don't understand why they can't just go to school in that town.
The only situation where we would bring a child in from another district that we would be responsible for the transportation would be in a homeless situation.
That's not true. I know 6 children in my daughter's grade alone who are being brought in from other towns. Okay? We're sending buses out to pick these children up. They are not special needs children. They're being brought in at our expense. I don't know what it costs to run a bus for an individual child. I'm assuming $20,000 to $30,000 a year, though, between paying the driver, fuel, and stuff like that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, again, we're talking about passing around hats here to collect money from students to play for sports, to charge them for parking. It's a little ridiculous. I've been in this town my entire life. My family's been in this town for 200 years. For those of us that have been born, raised here, it means something to be in this town. It's an embarrassment to have to start telling people, oh, well, can you pull your wallet out to play baseball this year, or can you pull your wallet out to park here? It's ridiculous for this township. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir, if I just, I would ask you to call my office in the morning, make an appointment so we can determine who these students are, who you're talking about with.
That would be perfect, because I'm personally upset because I've heard their parents openly laugh about how they have kids that are going to be coming here for the next few years, free of charge, on our dime.
I'm asking you to please come to my office, and I would like to know that information.
Absolutely.
Thank
you.
My name is Joachim Mahner from Fort South Colonial Ridge. I have two kids here in the district, one in UAS and one on the way, 3.5 years old. Two set of questions. One is on the pay-to-play. I'm say I'm not in favor of that. I see, just like the other speakers here, a lot of potential side effects of that. Couple of questions, and I know you're going to take it offline, but first is, have we started the scenarios with lawsuits? How much will they cost? Would that potentially offset the revenue if there's 1 or 2 lawsuits against it? Secondly, how exactly it's going to be for these parents that don't qualify for the lunch program? How much administrative hoops would they have to go through? Would they have to document tax revenue for the last 5 years? Have meetings? How much administrative hoops would they have to go through to get a waiver and not have to pay?
Hold on, he's going to turn you on.
He has to put the mic on.
Oh, mic on.
He,
Hello? Okay, yes. So how many administrative hoops would a parent have to go through if they don't qualify for the lunch program? Have to show tax revenue, meet several times, fill out forms. I mean, how embarrassing, and how much would they have to do that? And thirdly, if we really have to go that route, what about just making it voluntary? So nobody has to pay, but we encourage people to pay. That way, we get rid of some of the embarrassment, some of the administration, and the lawsuit. I'm sure that there are people here that can afford it and would write the check and support. And finally, if we really want to embarrass people, to get kids to drop out and not do the extracurricular activities, because in high school there was several $100s, and we heard there's some money that not everybody can afford. If we really want to go that route, why not wait to a year where we don't have bank cap? Why not consider this our safety vault? So use bank cap this year, use bank cap next year. The third year where we really have no other option, then go to this pay to play. Why extort? Why use up this option now when we have alternatives? It's $200,000. We can take it from the bank cap. So that was one set of questions. The other is to the increased class sizes in the high school. I'm sure you're all aware of the rating that most of high school have gotten and the increase in high school rating. I'm sure you're aware that in addition to test scores and other things, one of the factors that our rating increased, I believe, from like 40 up to, I don't remember the numbers, but quite dramatic over the last few years. You know, you saw the cover article. One of the factors is class size. If we're going to increase our class size, have you studied the impact that we can expect on the rating of the high school? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Marcy Healy, and I just have 3 questions. Obviously, pay to play is a very small chunk of our budget, and we have other issues that we have to address in order to really address the budget. But in terms of pay to play, for the $225, let's say, for the high school, what is that going to cover? Like, what's the breakdown for that?
That would cover, the fees would be associated with any position that had a stipend associated with it. So, you know, if it was a sports or a theater program or some of the clubs, it would be $225 as an annual fee for the student, and it would just be used to offset the overall cost of the program.
Just the overall cost? Because my son does theater and magicals, and we just did the ad book, we just finished, and let me tell you, the programs here are amazing. I did email the board members a letter about the certain programs and the pay to play, but I guess my concern is we already, I paid a $100 ad, I'm donating food, and I'm doing all these other things, and I'm happy to do that. It's not that I'm not happy to do that, but what you're saying is that my taxes are going to increase $220